Apply to Stacks to work on exciting projects focused on private equity, strategy and growth, exit planning, operational improvements, and data and analytics. Stacks is a boutique strategy firm serving private equity firms and their portfolio companies across several industries, including tech, healthcare, consumer and retail, industrials, and more. The cool thing about Stacks? You'll get near equal exposure to each industry, making for a well-rounded consulting experience. Whether you're an undergraduate student, MBA candidate, experienced professional, or somewhere in between, Stacks has a role for you. Ready to up-level your career? See which roles the firm is hiring for and submit your application through the link in this episode's show notes or on the careers page at stacks.com. That's STAX.com.
Hi everyone, my name is Edward, and I'm so excited to tell you about a new type of episode coming to Strategy Simplified. We're going to be doing a listener's mailbag, where we answer your questions about consulting. Do you have a question that you want answered? Well, go ahead and record a voice recording just like this one, but don't forget to include your name, location, school and/or current job, as well as the question itself. We're so excited to hear your questions, and we're even more excited to answer them. Go ahead and email your questions to podcast@managementconsulted.com. We can't wait to hear them. Thank you.
Today's Strategy Simplified. We wish that we could say that we get hundreds or thousands of emails a year asking about consulting and networking. But sadly, we do not. We get maybe 10 or 15 emails a year. And we believe it's a huge missed opportunity for candidates looking to break into consulting. In today's podcast, we share a recent live event where we talk about why you're making a huge mistake if networking is not a core part of your consulting recruiting strategy. In addition, we share who to network with, who to reach out to, when to network, what's the best time of year for networking, how to network, do I send them emails or LinkedIn messages, what kinds of emails do I save, and much more. Make sure to join our email list to be notified about future live events like this one. Also, look up Strategy Sprint. There's a link in the show notes to learn more, but Strategy Sprint is a one-week virtual consulting project where you're staffed in a team of 5 to 6 and you serve a real-world client to solve one of their strategic or growth issues. It's a mini MBB engagement. You'll build consulting skills and gain experience that looks and sounds great on your resume, in networking conversations, and in interviews. There's just a few spots left for the next program that happens at the end of May. One more in the show notes. We'd love to have you join. All right, let's get into this networking for consulting conversation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So excited to have you join us today for our networking strategy call. Yesterday, we kicked off Black Belt for May, and we spent almost half of the time on networking because almost everybody in the call knows that they are able to, but doesn't yet have an interview. And so that's really what our focus is going to be on today is how in the world do you get an interview at one of these impossible to get into firms? And then, what do you do for prep related to that interview? So we're going to hopefully demystify a few of those things today. So today I'm going to talk about networking strategy. And this is something I'm really passionate about. Very few people pay us to help them with networking, even though it's probably the most important part of the process. It's where the most people are kicked out of the interview process at the firm. And so it is your opportunity to change your future if you get it right. And that's why I get excited about it. That's why we like sharing it. That's why we do these free calls, because it's like one of those things that everybody knows that they need, but nobody necessarily wants to invest in, and we get it. We're going to talk about networking 101, just the background of like, why do you network? What the heck is the point? Then we're going to talk about the networking process and networking in the resume review. First, I'm just going to talk about networking 101 and kind of the whys, the wheres, and what you need to know, but also maybe more specifically, how networking and consulting is a little different than other networking. This is not vanilla networking. This is specific, like salty caramel gelato networking, right? So let's keep this focused on what we're going to do for consulting in particular. First thing that you need to know is that there are actually more than one reason to network. And a lot of people think, I'm going to network so that I can get a great interview opportunity. Sure, that's definitely one of them. That on our list is number 3. But networking actually rounds out your understanding of a firm that you're planning to go spend not one, but at least multiple years of your life with, that's going to shape the culture, your values, your skills, your experience, who's going to mentor you, your opportunities in the future. These are actually kind of big things, and I think you should pay attention to them. So the first reason that you probably need to network is that when they ask you in a networking call, in your cover letter, and later inside your resume, as well as when you're sitting inside the interview, they're going to say, why do you want to work here? Like, why Bain? Why McKinsey? Why LEK? And if you say, I read something on your website, immediately, right? Hands down, they're just not interested in you because it feels like you don't have a personal connection or personal relationship with them. So what they're looking for is a story about someone that you talked to, something that they said that really compelled you, that was interesting, that made you excited, not just about the career of consulting, but about this specific firm, and maybe even more tailored, that specific office that you're applying to. So people who have networked always have the better answers, which means that when you go into, especially the final round interview where fit is 50% of your score, it's critical that you understand when somebody says, why the firm, that they know who the firm is. That can be the differentiator between someone who gets the offer and someone who doesn't. The second is the personal reason, right? Why the firm, answering it for yourself. I mean, I asked some just like, hey, why do you love working here? I did that with an investment bank in my senior year of college. I was applying for an internship. I was a little late to the party, but it was also in the middle of a recession, so that was fine. And so, he was like, look, I love you. You're great. You can calculate things in your head. I said, awesome. Like, why do you love this? And his answer was just so outside of my core values that I canceled my final round interview with the bank. And I think it's really valuable for you to pay attention to whether people express love and passion and joy, and also just transparency about the work that they're doing, the conflicts and the opportunities, right? The why the firm should not be one-dimensional, and it gives you the opportunity to really match up whether their values or your values too. The third thing is to get a referral. And we're going to talk really tactically about exactly how to do that in this session today. But when you're focused on more than just getting a referral, it feels, even though I'm going to recommend that this is a transactional process and it happens quickly, punctually, in a very short amount of time, that actually the main focus doesn't feel transactional because you're relationally looking for more than just, hey, what's up? My name is Jenny Ray. Give me an interview, right? We're not trying to do that harsh approach here. The second is to tailor your application, right? So when you're writing a cover letter and you're able to name drop that you know somebody and spoke with them already inside an organization, the name dropping itself doesn't help. But if you are in that kind of middle range where they're like, hey, we're not sure if we're going to interview this person or not, what happened, I mean, I remember it happening 5 times crystal clear. There were probably more than that, where somebody would say, hey, this person wrote that they met Jenny Ray either at a networking session or in a one-on-one afterwards. Jenny Ray, what do you think? Should we take him for an interview or not? I was the final answer. And so sometimes I would say, I don't remember them. I mean, that's not great. Sometimes I would say, yeah, they actually followed up. They were really polite. Sometimes I said, they followed up. This is a hard no. Like, this person either can't write, was really aggressive, right? And so, like, no matter what, though, the process of putting somebody's name in your cover letter will bubble you up to the surface in the conversation. Obviously, it's up to you to make sure that that interaction is awesome. And then when you are in the room interviewing with people, what we would do at Bain is we would kind of go through everybody's resume. And there were some that basically they said, hey, out of the 60 slots that we're going to interview, here are 20 that we think just like are fabulous. They have a partner referral. One of you knew them really well. And so we're just going to go through those in 5 minutes. We're going to flip through them. And if anybody has any objections, that's a no. But then afterwards, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit too, having an advocate in the room was that then they would go through and they would say, awesome. Okay, Beth, you're number one, right? Beth's resume would pop up on the screen. Hey, does anybody know Beth? If I had talked to Beth, I'd say, yeah, I talked to Beth. I think Beth is solid. Right? Really liked this about her resume, liked this about her story. If I didn't, then there's nobody to speak for you. So it can make a big difference again when people are selecting who is going to get the opportunity to interview. There are two parts of networking for consulting. The first one is getting in the door, right? Your job in the networking for consulting process is to get a referral within one conversation. And so even though it is transactional, it is also relational. And the second purpose is for you to conduct research. And again, the people who come in conducting research, not just get better information, but also present themselves differently. Let me explain. If somebody comes in and they say, Bain is my only choice, they're the one that I want to work for, give me an interview. Versus, look, I'm looking at a bunch of different options. I'm kind of trying to decide between product management and consulting, but I'm also looking at McKinsey as well as Bain. Like, could you help me tease through what some of the differences are between those firms? All of a sudden, you just activated the consultant in me who says, you know what, I would love to help you. And by the way, Bain is the best, right? You activate my selling mode when you get me into that. And so we have a different conversation. I have a different experience with you. And you're also presenting that you have options, not in a hard to get kind of way, just in a polite, kind, look, I've got things that I'm thinking about and I'm trying to decide between them for the future. When someone becomes your advisor, you build a different connection with them. Why do consultants respond to cold networking, right? A lot of you said that you're experienced hires or MBAs. Like when you write to them, why do they write you back? The number one reason that they would cite is that they say that they're there to pay it forward, right? Somebody helped them. And I did it for that exact reason. When I wrote to people, actually, I kind of got recruited in the first place, but then my friend at McKinsey's was like, hey, you should write to people at BCG and Bain. And I wrote to people who I knew adjacently, but they weren't close friends. And they were just like, absolutely 15 minutes, no problem, right? Somebody did that for me 10 times over when I was going through the process. I'm happy to do it for you. Number two is that it's part of the job, right? When you come in, it is imparted to you in the consulting firm that part of your responsibility, because your product is people, is to build more product. And so you have a responsibility to go to recruiting events, to read 500 resumes a quarter, to do the resume reviews at some point in the process after you've been there for at least a year to begin to become a part of the interviewer team. Like it's a part of your job. It's one of the things that they pay you for. It's expected. It's a part of the culture. It's a part of what you do. But the third reason, which I think is the most fun and the most kind of underknown, is that many firms pay a bonus for people who refer successful candidates. Let me highlight the word successful there, because if you came to me cold and I said, wow, I love what you're doing, but you're not going to get in, you have to trust me because I would pass you on if there was a shot. Why? Because Bain was going to pay me $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, kind of depending on the level and the timing in the world. Like right now, the bonuses aren't as rich as they were a couple of years ago because there are fewer spots available. But a few years ago, right, they were just like, where are the bodies? We need to staff these projects. We can sell more work. We need more people. Go find us great people. Right. And the bonuses are not the forward reason, which is why I said them third, but they are a part of why somebody will jump on the phone with a stranger for 15 minutes. Why? Because if they get the chance to pay it forward and it's part of the job, but they also might get a check in the mail after you succeed. They're looking for people who are likely to be successful in the process, and they will advocate for you and pass you on. So if you didn't know, when you reach out, you're interested in an interview, they're also aligned with you. And I think that's a really important context shift because a lot of people go into this process thinking how many challenges there are in networking and not why the opportunities present themselves.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast, where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
Investor Group Services, or IGS, is a boutique consultancy focused on the world of private equity. Specifically, the firm advises private equity and investor clients on transaction and growth initiatives via M&A due diligence, sell-side industry analysis, strategic support, and more. IGS is actively looking to add talented individuals to its 60-person team. Apply today through the firm's careers page at igsboston.com or by clicking the link in this episode's show notes.
There are three things that matter to consultants. Number one is education. What is your pedigree? Right? If you went to a target school, I will automatically talk to you. Did you do quantitative work? Were you an engineer? Were you in finance? Did you do math? Did you do something scientific? I kind of want to see that you like quant work, because even though the firms don't do a great job of telling you, 80% of the job is Excel. It's a massive, massive quantitative job. It's not as quantitative as quantitative analytics for a hedge fund, but it's really quantitative. And so I need to know that you've done it, that you like it, like that maybe you liked it enough to major in it, and also that you did well. Right. And I want to see that you did well. And really what I'm looking for is the trifecta here, right? But if you have one or the other, I will also take a look at you. So if you did a quant degree, I'll still look at you. If you did a pedigree school, but non-quant degree, I'll still look at you. If you did the top two, but not the performance, I'll still look at you. In general, there are a couple of hard cutoffs for GPAs. People always ask us this. It's a 3.2 is usually the hard cutoff for most firms, and many firms prefer to see over a 3.5. What I think is very interesting is that many of the firms actually don't care whether you have a 3.5 or a 3.7 or a 3.9. So it's kind of like it's a yes or no checkbox rather than, hey, this person has a 4.2 and this person has a 3.5. The experience is the second piece. Right? So did you work at a brand name firm? If you all worked at Google for the summer, I'm going to take a second look at you faster than somebody who worked for Sal's Pizza Company, right? And I mean, I love Sal's Pizza Company. You should work at Sal's Pizza Company. You probably learn a lot by working at Sal's Pizza Company, but I still don't know whether you would like this job or be good at it if you work at Sal's Pizza Company. And so the brand names help me understand that you're able to get into and handle yourself in a matrixed, complicated, large, fast-paced organization. I'm also looking for your analytical ability. That's one of the reasons why a strategy sprint is built around analytics. You train in analytics, you do case competition with analytics, and then we run you through the week-long project for analytics, right? So that when afterwards you fill something in on your resume, it says, I built a model in Excel to analyze X, Y, or Z. And the insights that you get from that are going to be really, really exciting. Business understanding is the third piece. Business understanding. I'm looking for your ability to have worked in and been in industry. Right? So if you only did, for example, nonprofit work. I mean, I did, right? I did a grant in Western Africa focused on malaria treatment in hospitals, not actually super businessy focused. What did they focus on in my background? I actually had entrepreneurial experience in South Africa. That's what they focused on. So having some kind of business understanding is really critical. And then distinction, right? On Strategy Sprint, we have the opportunity for you to become a project leader. We're looking for that. Who are the people who out of 6 people became the leader? Who are the people who out of a cohort of emerging leaders was one of the top 5%? We're looking for that kind of competitive nature and the ability to rise above it. And then finally, leadership, right? We're looking for extracurricular experience where you manage people, budgets, and impact. One of my favorite questions I've ever gotten, this was at an event in Durham in England at the university there. Someone raised her hand and she said, I'm the president of the pole dancing society here at Durham. And I'm wondering if I can and should put that on my resume. So I took a poll in the room and I was like, everybody who thinks that fits in this leadership category, raise your hand, right? And about 50% of the room went up. And I said, everybody who thinks that you should definitely not put it on there, raise your hand. 50% of the room went up. So I had to be the tiebreaker. And I said, look, here's the issue. You're doing all the things. It checks all the boxes, people, budgets, and impact. But this is not a professional experience that you want somebody to picture you doing, right? I picture you when you say that you're in this as a pole dancer, not as a pole dancing president of a society. So take it off your resume. If you want to highlight it as an extracurricular, something that you're really interested in, I'm sure it would spark a lot of conversation, but really focus on the things where you're going to be working in a laptop, sitting in a room with a team, not necessarily focused on the kind of leadership that would lead people to an imagery that doesn't necessarily associate with consulting. In our office, we do $1 bets. Last week, the $1 bets were how many cows are there in America as a ratio to people, right? And this is what consultants do when you build companies, is that you have $1 bets on market sizing questions, like how many cows are there in America. But anyhow, we should have had a $1 bet on how many times did people reach out. The assumption is always that it's high, but at the most, it was 10 to 12 a year for me, like once a month. So I'm not sitting there like, oh, another one, the 50th one today. That's not happening. When you reach out, you're the first one this week, maybe the first one this month to have done it. And so I do really want to encourage you that that you might think that this is happening all the time, that you might think that they don't want to talk to you, but I'm trying here in this conversation for networking strategy for our first, half an hour together to really just demystify what happens inside the networking process. There are 5 rules of networking. You need to be talking to, number 1, the right person, number 2, at the right time, number 3, at the right firm, number 4, in the right location, and number 5, for the right position. So let me talk a little bit about this. There is one group on this that actually doesn't make sense to talk to unless you are an expert hire, which means like you've done healthcare for 20 years and they're going to hire you in the healthcare practice. Look, you can reach out to partners. They will absolutely reach out to you if they're having a great day or if you say something super compelling. It'll happen 5% of the time, maybe. It's not a 0. I mean, I used to tell people never reach out to partners, and then they would always be sneaky and reach out to partners. And some of the ones that did got interviews. So good for you if you reach out to a partner. If you know a partner, they'll respond to you. So if anytime you already know somebody, family friend, business acquaintance of a family friend, parent, et cetera, go for it, right? Reach out to a partner. Managers are kind of like in no man's land. Managers are great to reach out to if you're an experienced hire with more than 5 years of work experience after an MBA or more than 10 years of cumulative work experience. And so managers are the ones that are really involved in that hiring process. But they're actually the busiest people inside the organization. They're learning to sell, they're managing teams, and they're learning how to basically also lead the firm. So it's kind of a challenging role. They're not the most involved. Post-MBAs, massively involved. Anybody who is applying at the post-MBA level, which includes advanced degree professionals, the post-MBAs are responsible for selecting amongst them who will be interviewing. Pre-MBAs, the same for anybody who has under 5 years of work experience or is in their undergrad or a specialty master's program. So the answer is recruiters. Now, you are very sensible people, right? Sensible people would say that recruiters have a job and their job is to recruit. What's interesting in consulting firms is that recruiters are administrators and their main job is to kind of keep the tidal wave of applicants from affecting the rest of the organization. So they're actually more like bouncers at a club versus like salespeople on the street in New York handing out flyers like, come to my show, right? And so it's a really different situation because they don't want to talk to you. They don't have the same authority. And their only main authority is what we call negative authority, which is that if they don't like you, they can lose your application or not pass you on. So actually, I mean, even though if a recruiter writes you, if you have an administrative question, 1000% of the time you have to be nice to recruiters, right? Anytime any of that happens, of course you engage with recruiters, but you're not going to find a lot of value from reaching out to them cold. So I'm glad you came to the call today. Hopefully that's a big takeaway for you. Who do you actually reach out to? You reach out to the person who is in the position that you're applying for. Actually, the more senior they are, the less removed they are from that position. So post-MBA, post-MBA, pre-MBA, pre-MBA, manager, manager, partner, partner. When do you contact people? Look, this timeline used to be later, but now for full-time MBAs, APDs, advanced professional degrees, and all undergrads, hiring happens in June, July, and August. And so we're just like right in this moment right now. And yesterday, one of the questions that we got in Black Belt was, when should I start networking? Because the conventional wisdom that I told them is that you should begin networking when you're ready for your interviews. And I said, you should actually probably begin networking now. And you need to, by the day that you drop your resume, be ready for interviews. So like you have 1 to maximum 2 months to network. Let's get on it. Right. Sometimes there's just scheduling, y'all, that, right, I'm going to Egypt and Jordan and Israel for a couple of weeks. And so like, if you write me, I'm like, sure, later in May, we can talk, so kind of having that interaction with folks early and giving them the chance to schedule is better. So right now we're kind of in the middle of researching consulting industry and identifying target firms, beginning the networking process. If you haven't started yet, you are a little late for this year's hiring cycle. If you haven't started for next year, you're actually a little early. You can wait until the hiring closes in like August, September, and begin the process then. Preparing your resume and cover letter, really you should be working on that pronto. Preparing for case and fit interviews, that should start now too, because it's coming and it's going to feel like it comes up quickly. Attending info sessions, that's going to start now. The firms are beginning to kind of start their info session process, dropping your resume, and then also having the offer. I think actually the second drop resume should be interviewing. It seems like that would be an important part of this process overall. So we expect that the interviews are going to happen kind of mid-July to mid-September this year. So networking and the resume review, right? A killer resume, which you do need, you like just having an advocate and a terrible resume doesn't help. Like actually some of them will just tell you, sure, I'm happy to refer you. And they're going to be like, just kidding, if you have a terrible resume. So if you haven't gotten your resume reviewed by us, please send it in. We will tell you whether you need an edit or not, and whether or not it's going to succeed in consulting. We can't tell you with 100% certainty if it will, but we can definitely tell you if it won't. So we'd love to help you with that if you haven't sent that in. What happens to the CV, right? CVs are submitted on Wednesdays. HR compiles a book on Thursdays. And usually the CVs are submitted on a Wednesday because HR gives people the ability to individually score over a weekend. So like on a Friday, basically everybody gets the digital book. This actually used to be a physical book when I worked at Bain, right? It was like 500 resumes in a huge bound stack. And I would like take it with me on my flight to Paris or wherever I was going for the weekend. And I would charge through it. At Bain, what we did was a 1 to 4 scoring. 1 was high and 4 was low. And so anybody who we loved, 1, anybody who we didn't, got another number. Their recommendation was maximum 1s and 4s. Like try not to do 2s and 3s everywhere. It makes the scoring and the differentiation and the pooling a lot harder. And so anyhow, we had 5 days to review those resumes individually and numerically. And then all of those numbers were compiled into a spreadsheet. So it wasn't just me that was picking you. It was 11 of us that were reviewing your resume for 10 seconds. So, everybody says you only have 5 or 10 seconds to impress a recruiter. That's true, except there's 11 of us. So you have 5 or 10 seconds to impress 11 people is actually the real truth inside consulting. Then HR creates those preliminary buckets based on the scores, right? These people got phenomenal scores. We should interview them. These people did not get good scores. We should not interview them. Here are the 100 left that we're going to interview. Potentially, let's discuss them, right? So these are the 3 categories. The A list are people who got in through partner networking, who are high-ranking candidates through the numerical system I just explained, who are pre-selected, usually through diversity channels. If you've networked with somebody inside the firm, you've gone to a diversity conference, or you're part of a diversity hiring initiative, that's important for them. And then also the pro list, right? So the pro list here is just like basically people who you don't go through standard networking, but like I would just say, look, out of everybody whose resume I read, this is like my one favorite, right? This is the one person that I talked to. I really think that we should have this person. So my networking as a junior person or a just post MBA doesn't hold the same weight as a partner does, but I still get those people onto the A list sometimes. So out of, let's call it 500 resumes, 20 maybe would be on the A list. 50%, 250-ish of them would be in the abyss. They were people who networked poorly. What I mean by that is like you spammed everybody in the office. You were harsh. You got mad at somebody on a phone call, like anything that is just kind of like automatic disqualification, or you ranked low, like you were a consistent 4 across everybody. They were like, nah. The to discuss are all the remainder. These are the medium ranking candidates and any rescues from the abyss. There was actually one guy that I went to school with who did not have a good resume, but he was phenomenal. And a few of us, when we saw his application come through, we were like, we have to interview this guy. He's actually an amazing person. And so we rescued him, even though his resume didn't have good scores from the abyss. We discussed him. I can't remember actually if we ended up giving him an interview or not. There's kind of a lot of politics and psychology and negotiation that goes into who you advocate for and how hard you advocate for them inside those conversations. So let's talk now through the kind of final piece, right? How do you network? If you follow these structured steps, y'all are going to succeed. So there is no formula. Let me make this clear. Different people are different. Different people follow different mechanisms. Some of you are introverted. Some of you are just delightfully bubbly and kind. Some of you are extroverted. Some of you have a wild background. Some of you have a systematic background. No formula for success here. We've seen people that we didn't think could succeed be successful. We've seen people that we thought for sure they would be winsome. They didn't either put in the work or they didn't kind of follow through. They didn't have a structured process. So the process is different than the formula, but let me walk you through the process. Number one, your resume. And I've already mentioned this, but you can send a resume to us. We will look it over and we'll say, yes, no, maybe so, right? Resume, it's not like a full resume review. We don't say, change this, do this. Like you pay us for that, but we will tell you whether your resume is ready. And if you want to consultify your resume first, that's really good. Here's why. You can use it for absolutely every other interview. It's not like banking where you have to focus on finance experience. Nobody cares whether you have consulting experience going into consulting. They care whether you have analytical experience, quantitative experience, project experience, leadership experience. That's actually what everyone in the world is looking for right now. So it's great if you make the investment in making a great resume. You're going to be able to use it across every firm. In addition, you're going to be asked for it at some point in the networking process. Generally, I don't recommend that you attach it to emails when you send them to people. First of all, it can get caught in a spam filter. But I do recommend that if you get an informational call with somebody 5 minutes before the call, you shoot them an email with your resume attached. So you want to have the resume conversation with them right on the phone. The second is an email. And actually, your job is to convert everything that you're doing to one call by a very specific ask. And we're really clear about this. We'll talk about this in the networking intensive, but we'll actually write an email with and for you. The focus is on actually asking them for a specific time for a call. It's important that in the email, you quickly convey your competency. We just reviewed somebody's yesterday. It was like 6 times longer than it needed to be, right? So it's got to be punchy. Competency is a communication piece. Is a competency piece of the consulting interviews. And yes, it's an email, not LinkedIn, interestingly. Now you can find people on LinkedIn. You can even message them a follow-up to your email on LinkedIn. But if they're scheduling with you, you want to do it by email. That's where they hold their life. And it's going to be a differentiator. So not everybody checks LinkedIn every day. And they're going to get their email from you. They're going to get the calendar invite, like just send it right over. You can send over a direct calendar invite in your first message to them. When you're on the call, what is the point of the call? You spend 15 minutes with them. It is an informational interview. You are trying to gather information about them. They also are trying to gather information about you, but that's not why they got on the call with you. Okay. Number 2, you have to have an agenda. It's mandatory. The call has to begin with, hey, here are the things that I want to cover in this next 15 minutes. You should prepare 2 to 3 specific questions. Again, in the intensive, we'll go into more detail on this. But the questions should be positive, specific, and personal. They should not be general. They should not be negative, and they should not be focused on anything that is kind of a trajectory of the firm. So these are not journalism questions. They're personal, happy, like connective questions, and there's a real quality to those that matters. At the end of the call, you will ask somebody in these exact words: after this call today, would you feel comfortable referring me for an interview? They don't want a second call. They know the answer to that question. They don't want a third call. They don't want a 5th call. They don't want you to email them. They don't want to mentor you through the process. They want a decision and they want it now. And it's your job to ask for it. If they tell you yes, then talk about next steps. If they tell you no, then recommend or ask them for recommendations, a plan of attack for how you fill in your gaps. Some of them are going to tell you, like, you just don't have experience that resonates with us. Go do a project or a strategy sprint or an internship, right? Go do one of those things so that you have the opportunity to build and fill in your gaps. At the end of the day, it is a transactional process. You are relational in nature, but it is one email or two emails if you need to follow up. That's the most number of emails that you send to one person, one phone call, and one request for referral. Make it easy on everybody. I really, really want to encourage you about this.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Pod. We're glad you're here. If you're finding this useful at all in any part of your consulting and recruiting process or elsewhere, we'd love to hear from you. And you can also be entered for a chance to win one of our consulting prep courses. All you have to do is leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and then shoot us an email, podcast@managementconsultant.com, and you'll be entered to win. We can't wait to hear what you think of the pod. In addition, make sure to join us for Strategy Sprint happening at the end of May. We'd love to have you join this 1-week virtual consulting project. Learn more, link in the show notes.